Why is Kemi Badenoch getting beef from her home country? The Conservatives leader grew up in Nigeria, but she's now being criticised for not always having the kindest words for the African nation. Badenoch, who was born in London but spent most of her first 16 years in Nigeria, said in 2022 it was a place wrought with poverty and broken dreams. And this year she added that fear was everywhere in the country.
Where she is getting things wrong at the moment is she's sort of picking the wrong topics. She's talking about immigration, she's talking about kind of wokeness and cultural wars, whereas the first and central task is to start to re-establish economic credibility for the Tories. That's the bedrock of any Conservative victory. And I have not yet heard enough from her about that. She doesn't have to be specific policies at all, but it's about values and principles upon which you can build your...
Greetings and welcome to Auntie Ami channel. How are you? How are you doing everywhere you are? Today we are going to talk about Kemi Badenoch. Kemi Badenoch is a leader of Conservative, which is one of the opposition party in UK. She is a descendant of Nigerian parents. She descended from Nigeria, though she was born in the UK. As a politician and a leader of a main opposition party in the UK, Kemi has had very difficult time and challenges to rebuilding the Conservative Party after its record low performance in July 2024 general election, where it won just 121 seats. Her leadership is marked by efforts to differentiate from Reform UK, which is another party, and Nigel Farage, who is the leader of Reform Party, particularly focusing on integration, fiscal discipline, and opposition to populism. Recent policy for Kemi includes a pledge to ban doctor strike. As I'm talking now, there have been a doctor strike in the UK under Labour government. And military industrial action framed as part of the broader public spending reform inspired by Argentina President Javier Milei. Today is not about that, but today I'm going to talk about some of the speeches and remarks Kemi has made about Nigeria. Kemi has made speeches which has made her to get beef from her own country, Nigeria, which now she's saying that it's not her country. She's not from there. She even said, I no longer identify myself as Nigerian. I've never renewed my passport since early 2000. As I said before, she was born in the UK. And during interview with CNN, she said, my children can't get Nigerian citizenship because I'm a woman, yet Nigerians easily become UK citizens. It cannot happen in Nigeria. Let's watch this clip together as we continue to subscribe, like, comment, and share.
So you say to somebody who's coming from Nigeria and wants to create a little mini Nigeria in Britain?
No, that is not right. And Nigerians would not tolerate that. That's not something that many countries would accept. There are many people who come to our country, to the UK, who do things that would not be acceptable in their countries. It's virtually impossible, for example, to get Nigerian citizenship. I had that citizenship by virtue of my parents. I can't give it to my children because I'm a woman. Yet loads of Nigerians come to the UK, stay for a relatively brief period of time, acquire British citizenship. We need to stop being naive, and that's why under my leadership we now have policies to make it a lot harder to just get British citizenship. It's been too easy. It's basically a conveyor belt. We want people who have who want to come to our country to be net contributors, not people who will immigrate and then need welfare.
Kemi has continuously warned of the dangers of poor governance, drawing direct parallels between corruption in Nigeria and systemic risk in the UK. She said, I grew up in a poor country, meaning Nigeria, watched my relatively wealthy family become poor. My father's last £100 lived with the consequences of terrible governments that destroy lives. Underlined her commitment to preventing Britain from repeating similar mistakes. What do you think in a comment section? Do you believe that this is the right way for Kemi to be comparing Nigeria to the policies she will use in getting back voters to her party? And she did not even stop from there. Watch this clip as we continue to subscribe.
I was born here, but I grew up in a place where fear was everywhere. You cannot understand it unless you've lived it. Triple checking that all the doors and windows are locked, waking up in the night at every sound, listening as you hear your neighbors scream as they are being burgled and beaten. I don't regret things that I didn't say, but thank you for asking. I've said maternity pay is important. If we want to fix maternity pay, we need to start with making sure that government isn't intervening in business excessively. Businesses can then pay more.
Do you think your comments have been misinterpreted?
Of course they have. There was a long interview, but if you're taking 30-second clips, it's very easy to misinterpret. But one of the things that I'm not going to let happen is allow other people.
Kemi also made a speech about Nigerian police conduct. She recounted a childhood memory about exhaustion by Nigerian police officers. The police in Nigeria will rob us, said Kemi. Police stole my brother's shoe and his watch. Contrasted this with her positive experience of British law enforcement. All these speeches she's connecting to her policies, which she's warning British government not to repeat, not even to be compared with Nigerian police or Nigerian government policies. So let's listen again. As you can hear, Kemi continues to trash Nigeria and also to trash Nigerians' policies and even Nigerian government in different ways. Let's listen to the clip.
I went to a secondary school. It was called a federal government girls' school in a place called Shagamu. And that was like being in prison. When I tell the stories about using a machete and having, because there are no lawnmowers, that's the place that I'm talking about, having to fetch buckets of water. And that was the first time that I was away from home, away from my family. And I wasn't just looking at...
This is a boarding school?
Yes, it's a federal boarding school. And it was very...
You shared a dormitory with other girls?
We're about 150, I think. 20 to 30 in a room, and there were 6 rooms.
And so the machete is for cutting the grass?
Yes, cutting the grass.
Explain why were you cutting the grass?
Well, because who else is going to cut the grass? It's just, it's the
grass grows and you have machetes to cut it.
Exactly. They're not, this is
As you heard, she frequently spoke about corruption and instability in Nigeria and what she witnessed growing up in Lagos, linking it to her dislike of socialism and state control. She portrayed Nigeria as a cautionary example of government failure. In a 2022 speech during her leadership bid, she said, "I saw what socialism is for millions. It's poverty and broken dreams." What about her clash with Nigeria Vice President Kashim Shettima criticized Badenoch, accusing her of denigrating her nation of origin during a speech about migration in Abuja. "We are proud of her in spite of her efforts at denigrating her nation of origin." What did she say also about her school life? In a boarding school in Lagos. What did she complain about? She even called it like a prison. Why was she calling it as a prison? Let's listen to her speech as we continue to subscribe, like, and comment.
I went to a secondary school. It was called a federal government girls' school in a place called Shagamu. And that was like being in prison. When I tell the stories about using a machete and having, because there are no lawnmowers, that's the place that I'm talking about, having to fetch buckets of water. And that was the first time that I was away from home, away from my family. And I wasn't just looking at...
This is a boarding school?
Yes, it's a federal boarding school. And it was very...
You shared a dormitory with other girls?
We're about 150, I think. 20 to 30 in a room, and there were 6 rooms.
And so the machete is for cutting the grass.
Yes, cutting the grass.
Explain why were you cutting the grass?
Well, because who else is going to cut the grass? It's just, it's the
grass grows and you have machetes to cut it.
Exactly. They're not, this is a federal school where this is the old grammar school system sort of fading out. And everyone who passed an exam and got a certain score got to go to a federal school. And this was more socialism. So they sprinkled people around. They didn't want one school getting all the best results. They would mix people about. So you could end up getting sent thousands of miles away to a boarding school, at the extreme end of the country. So I was lucky. I didn't get sent to...
Kemi did not want to hide because Kemi tells us it is, whether you like it or not. Kemi said she is against socialism. At this boarding school, it was like a prison because they have to wake up in the morning to fetch water, cutting grass. This was a federal school. She has to clean toilets without running water. It seems the time Kemi was in Nigeria, she did not learn anything. She did not even understand why in boarding schools they will ask children might be to fetch water or to cut grass, because I grew up in boarding schools in Africa. I can understand where she's coming from, because boarding schools here in the UK, even prisons, they don't do the same thing like hard labor like in Africa, because at the end of the day they believe that boarding schools, there are places where you can teach your kids who are the future generation, the youth who are the future generation, to learn some skills, even to learn some manners. Discipline, maybe I have to say discipline. But according to Kemi, you've heard her speech, it did not dwell with her because she did not like that. And if she becomes a prime minister here, she'll never allow something like that. And she's warning Britain not to allow something like that happening. Kemi has been picking wrong topics only to make herself popular in the UK. Let's listen to this video about one of the politicians in the UK, Miliband.
Where she is getting things wrong at the moment is she's sort of picking the wrong topics. She's talking about immigration. She's talking about kind of wokeness and cultural wars.
As you've heard, Kemi is picking wrong topics. Every time Kemi, when she's interviewed, she'll be talking about immigration, about Nigeria. Kemi has continuously decided to use her own country, Nigeria, to gain popularity in the UK among British people. Don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and listen to this clip where Kemi is even asking the British government to deport all immigrants. Kemi is saying she doesn't want UK to turn into Nigeria or India or whatsoever. This is a black African leader who is denying her ancestral home, who is denying the motherland, who is talking, standing up and said, you know what? I'm not from Nigeria. I'm not an African. I was born here. Even if my descendant came from there, or even if I descended from there, it doesn't matter. Home is where I am. Because she knows if she doesn't say that, she's not going to be chosen. But I'm not sure if she will convince voters in the coming general election for her to be chosen by making sure that she's selling her own people. Nigeria Vice President Kashim Shettima criticized Badenoch, accusing her of denigrating her nation of origin. During a speech about migration in Abuja, the Vice President of Nigeria said that we are proud of her in spite of her efforts at denigrating her nation of origin. She may even remove the Kemi from her name. Kemi's office responded bluntly. She is not PR of Nigeria. She tells the truth and she tells it like it is. In recent podcast interview, Kemi said no longer identifies as Nigerian despite being raised there. She has not renewed her Nigerian passport, as I said before. Subscribe, like, comment, and share. What do you think about Kemi's speeches? What do you think about the whole saga? Do you believe what Kemi is saying? Do you agree with her? Tell me this is debatable. I don't know what to say. I'm just here giving you this content. But at the end of the day, as an African, I know where she's coming from. Because this is how black people, we always do. But is she doing it in the right way? Do you agree that she faced a lot of that? Anyway, it's not me you can hear. I cannot even argue with her, but what I can say is like, this is what Africa is all about. We need to change Africans. We need to love our own. But do you think that she is on pressure? Let's listen to what other Westerners are saying about Kemi. Why is she getting beef from her own country, Nigeria? Listen to this clip.
there, or what happened to her in the country a few times. But now Nigeria has hit back in the form of the Vice President. Let's have a look at the Financial Times headline. Nigeria's Vice President launches attack on Tory leader Kemi Badenoch. Kashim Shettima's comments follow criticism by the Conservative leader of the country where she grew up. What do you make of this diplomatic row, if you like?
It's not a very good look for Kemi Badenoch, I would say. But ultimately, when politicians make comments like this, it's always for their own political capital. And I would say the comments of the Nigerian Vice President very much buy into something which is happening in the Nigerian media, where there are lots of media figures who attack Kemi Badenoch. And so the Nigerian Vice President has seen that and has decided that he wants to cash in on that anger for the way that she's speaking about the country that she grew up in after she was born in England. But at the same time, you never saw Priti Patel or Rishi Sunak talk about India in the way that Kemi Badenoch talks about Nigeria. And I would simply say, if you are a Brexiteer and you're saying we need to be expanding our global trade beyond the European Union, we want to be looking at emerging markets for growth, fastest growing markets, don't slag off one of the fastest growing economies in Africa with one of the youngest populations.
Kemi has made a lot of speeches. Kemi even said people will come here and lie that they are homosexual. But in real life, they are not. They've got their families. She was even connecting this to Nigerians who are claiming asylum here for fear. Do you think Kemi, if Kemi becomes a leader, is she going to be a good role model to the youth who were born here? These are our kids who were born here and being taught and listen to her what she's saying. Is she a good role model? To me, I believe that she is not a good role model. There is a mayor of London who is Khan, who is also originally from Pakistan. I've never heard him using his experience in Pakistan to compare with British policies. Because we all know there is a difference between Africa culture or tradition than with our Western culture and tradition. I'm not saying that her experience was good or wasn't good, but what I'm saying, I don't really understand why she would choose her home country just to get voters. What type of voters is she fighting for? Because even her own people are part of voting. Are you telling me if I was from Africa or Nigeria, how am I going to feel if our leaders whom we are voting for, they are using our weaknesses to build their strength? This is what Kemi is doing. I'm not here to judge her, and I'm not here to support her. Because at the end of the day, whatever she believes that it will help her, that's her own wish or her own will. But I will never support a leader who will come out here and make sure that she's disgracing her own roots. It doesn't work like that. Don't forget to subscribe, like, comment, and share as I ask you to listen again to this last clip.
I was born here, but I grew up in a place where fear was everywhere. You cannot understand it unless you've lived it. Triple checking that all the doors and windows are locked, waking up in the night at every sound, listening as you hear your neighbors scream as they are being burgled and beaten and wondering if your home will be next. I don't regret things that I didn't say, but thank you for asking. I've said maternity pay is important. If we want to fix maternity pay, we need to start with making sure that government isn't intervening in business excessively. Businesses can then pay more.
Do you think your comments have been misinterpreted?
Of course they have. There was a long interview, but if you're taking 30-second clips, it's very easy to misinterpret. But one of the things that I'm not going to let happen is allow other people. I went to a secondary school. It was called a federal government girls' school in a place called Shagamu. And that was like being in prison. When I tell the stories about you...
As you've heard from the beginning of this video, Kemi has rejected calls to moderate her tone because Kemi thinks what she's talking about is the truth. And Kemi doesn't care. Though she was born in the UK and raised in Nigeria, now she sees herself as entirely aligned with the UK. This is a sad part of all this story because this is our African woman who has refused to accept her rules. Shame on leaders like this because what they are forgetting is these youth who are born here, they are the future leaders. They need to know about where they came from. They need to know about their values. They need to know about their culture, tradition, you name it. But in this 21st century, we've got a leader like Kemi who doesn't understand. And we always say others might be racist, or we Africans, we always praise this person, praise this one, but you can see where it's coming from. We've got that in our blood. Africa will never change because if we've got leaders who are like Kemi, then Africa will never change. Thank you very much. God bless you as you watch this video. Make sure you comment and let me know what you think about the whole saga. Thank you very much. God bless you abundantly. Ciao, ciao. Bye.
Hey there, Aunt Yummy. You're the sweetest surprise. With a smile that sparkles beneath these bright skies. Your flavor's a melody, a tune that's so fine. A mix of adventure, oh, isn't it divine? Let's dance in the sun, let laughter take flight. With you by my side, everything feels right. Your vibe is contagious, so how it enchants. In this playful rhythm, let's take our chance. You bring the spice,